all of my crafty friends, it's Kiona the Craft Therapist, and I am going to be showing you guys how to make this card today. It is kind of like one of those pinwheel cards. I thought it was super cute. So while I'm doing our Mental Health Monday today, I'm going to be showing you how I created this. Now, with the amount of coloring that I did, I actually was able to get a couple of cards out of the images that I made. So I also made this one. Just wanted to show you guys, it won't be in the process video, but I did make this card along with the pinwheel card. And finally, I made this card as well for one of my favorite friends in the crafting community. Her birthday is coming up. Happy birthday, Debbie. And so I will be sending this out to her so she'll get to see it a little bit early because the video will come up before her birthday. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to get started, but I wanted you guys to see kind of what we were going to be working toward making today. And today, as a part of our Mental Health Monday, we're going to be going back into cognitive behavioral therapy and specifically talking about challenging your negative thoughts. So when we met a few weeks ago, and I will make sure that I link the last video, I kind of gave you an introduction to cognitive behavioral therapy and talked to you a little bit about why your thoughts can cause a problem for you, knowing how to record automatic thoughts, and started to briefly talk about how you can challenge your thinking. And that's kind of where I want to pick up today with you guys. So we went over the idea of thoughts not being facts and how we all have different kinds of biases like catastrophizing or excluding the positives or personalization that help us to get into this place of anxiety with our thoughts, and how cognitive behavioral therapy sets out to help us correct or course correct that. So one of the things that we talk about a lot when we start to think about changing the way that we think are, number one, recording our thoughts. This is what we call catching those thoughts. And then the second thing we talk about is changing your thoughts, or thought restructuring is something that you would hear us speak about in the mental health community. And so when we left off the last time, we talked about kind of creating a thought log, where you would talk about what the situation was and the thoughts that it happened in. And then we went on to talk about the actual thoughts that were happening. So what was the situation? What were the thoughts or images that you had? And then what were the emotions or body sensations, which was how you felt. And usually that is split up into a log just to kind of help you to understand where your thoughts are going. Today, one of the things that I wanted to do was go a little bit further and talk to you about 3 different techniques that I typically utilize in my practice and many clinicians use in order to allow clients to begin to gain more control over their thoughts, or being able to redirect and challenge negative thoughts much better. And so the first one kind of builds off of this idea that we spoke about during the last Mental Health Monday, and that was the recording of the thoughts. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is what we call perspective taking. So remember that the goal of CBT is not to always just think happy thoughts, but instead it is for us to think accurately. Our thinking can become biased, but it's within our power to change the way that we think. So whenever we're identifying automatic thoughts, it's the first step to managing your mind. So when you're able to identify those biases and the automatic thoughts that you're having, that's kind of your first step. So now that you can reliably catch your automatic thoughts, the next thing that we want to do is begin to examine them and see how accurate they are, and to see how fair you're being with yourself. And you always hear us say that we are our own worst critic. And this just kind of goes to show how true this actually is. So when we look at this perspective taking exercise, one of the things that we're going to be looking at, so you're looking at these columns, and the first thing that I want you to think about is the situation that bothered you. So this is where you would have an opportunity to describe that situation. The next thing that you would do is, how did you feel about it? Then we would look at like interpretation and the thoughts that you had about it. But the last step, and this is kind of where we go a step further, we're going to start talking about alternative viewpoints. So when we look at this, I'm going to take you through each area of this exercise one by one. So like I said, for example, number one, we want to record the information about the situation that bothered us. So you're going to jot down some information about the situation context in which you notice the change in your emotion. Some suggestions that would be helpful with the recording column with the situation is like making a note of the date and time, recording where you are, note who you were with. And then you want to kind of give yourself a summary of what happened just before you noticed the change in how you were feeling. So then secondly, you're going to record exactly how you felt. So this is when you describe the emotions and the body sensations that you were aware of. And then you're going to rate the intensity. So you're going to look at, well, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how intense were these feelings that I was having? So that's your second column, is how you're going to record how you felt about it. So then in our third column, we'll start talking about identifying the thoughts. So you're going to identify the thoughts you want to work on and write them down. Only work on one thought at a time. We don't want to be overwhelmed. If you had an image rather than a verbal thought, you can ask yourself, kind of, what does that say about me? And you use that answer as what your thoughts are. So we're going to be looking at one thought. What does this say about me? What is it that I am thinking or feeling right now? And then the fourth part of this is going to be considering other perspectives. So this is when we take a mental step back from the thought and try to consider other perspectives. So you might ask yourself something like, what's another way of looking at the situation? What would a friend tell me about this? Because that kind of takes us out of our own vision and puts us into someone else's seat at the table, as I like to say. What would Batman say to me? Will I ever remember this problem in 10 years' time? Like, sometimes things seem to be so extraordinary for us, but in all reality, in a year or two, in a month or two, we won't even remember the specific situation. And how would I respond to this situation if I had no fear? And sometimes that is one of the best questions to ask yourself, because a lot of our responses are fear-based, especially when we have a lot of anxiety. So once you're able to ask yourself those questions, then you can start to reflect again on how you're feeling. So you're going to compare how you felt when you first wrote it down, when this thing first happened, and now how do you feel? You want to think about what you notice about this process of trying to look at the situation from different points of views and how that may have been helpful for you. So this is what we call perspective taking. Like I said, it's 5 steps to it. And if you guys are interested, please leave me a comment below and I'll be glad to send you a copy of a form that I have that kind of guides you through doing these 5 steps on perspective taking, which will help a lot, because sometimes our brain is taking shortcuts and we don't take the time to think all the way through situations. And because we don't think all the way through situations, we just automatically go back to the feelings that we're used to, which are a lot of times fear-based responses. And that continues to have our anxiety going and going and going. So that's number 1. So that's our perspective taking. The next one that I want to talk about is one of my personal favorites, actually, and it's called putting your thoughts on trial. So another way of challenging your thinking is to hold what we call an imaginary court case and put your thoughts on trial. Your thoughts is the docket and the defense are arguing that it's true, and the prosecution is arguing that it's false. And your job is to be the defense, the prosecution, and the judge. So you get to wear multiple hats in this situation, and it forces you to think a little bit differently throughout the situation. And I also have a worksheet that I can provide to you guys on this one, but I wanted to kind of go through the 5 or 6 steps that we would go through when we're putting our thoughts on trial. So first, put your thought on the docket. So you're going to be identifying the thoughts that you want to work on, and you always want to write it down. You're going to hear me say that a lot because I believe that writing gets things out of your mind and onto paper, and it is very therapeutic. As a rule, it's best to work on one thought at a time. Again, you don't want to flood yourself. If you have an image, just like we talked about in the last one, you will ask yourself again, what does that say about me? And you would use the answer to help you formulate your wording. If your original thought was in the form of a question like, why am I so stupid? Or why am I a loser? Or things like that, then you turn it into a statement, an I am statement. So that's going to be the first thing. You're putting that thought on the docket. Number 2, you're going to do your defense. You're going to record evidence that suggests that the thought is true. So you put yourself in the shoes of the defense attorney. And your job is to argue that the thoughts are true. You want to make a list of the reasons why this thought might be true. Some of the reasons might be better than others, but try not to censor anything out. Just write down what comes to mind and keep asking yourself, what's the evidence that makes me think that this is true? Don't judge yourself in this. Just write down whatever it is that comes up for you. Once you're done with that, you're going to move over to being the prosecution. And then you're going to record evidence that suggests that this is false. So now you're going to put yourself in the shoes of being the prosecuting attorney. And your job is to argue that the thoughts are false. Again, you'll make a list of the reasons why these thoughts might not be 100% true all of the time. And remember, I say 100% true all of the time because sometimes we get into extreme thinking. Always, never, everybody, nobody, everything, nothing. Those are extreme thinking. And usually that tells you that you're having some negative thoughts that you need to challenge. So you might find it helpful, again, to ask yourself certain questions like, if a friend thought this about themselves, what would I say to them? How would you respond if you heard someone else saying these things to themselves? When was the last occasion that you had a thought like this that was not true? What facts or evidence makes you suspect that this isn't completely true? Has there ever been a time when this statement that you're talking about, this thing that you have on the docket, wasn't true? If you looked back on this thought in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what would you say about yourself? Would you think the same way? So that's kind of your job as the prosecution side of this. And you want to really, again, not judge, let it come out, write down whatever comes up for you, because this is all your evidence building. Remember, you have a jury here that's trying to hear all the information in order to make a really, really good decision. So then, step 4, you're going to, quote unquote, present your case to the jury. You're going to read everything out loud if you can, because sometimes we need to hear ourselves saying these words, because that really helps us to identify when we are being really critical of ourselves or when we are going to extremes. So if you can, try to make sure that you're saying these things out loud. So you present the case to the jury. You're going to read the original thought that you had. You're going to read all the reasons why it might be true, all the reasons why it might not be true. And then we're going to move to our verdict. So that step 5 is like where you kind of summarize what you've done. So the job now comes to be the verdict. When you say to yourself, given all the evidence, what is the fairest way to summarize up this situation? Write down your new thought. So this is going to help you formulate a new thought that comes up based upon all the information that you have. And some of the things that you might think about to yourself are like, is there a more helpful way for me to think about myself in this situation? Have I been judging myself harshly? Is there a more fair or balanced way of summing this up? Is there a way to think about this now that's more likely to help me achieve the goal? Because sometimes just the way that we think about things are just not helpful for us. Courts often use one or two ways of deciding whether the evidence presented in a case is convincing. Read them and think about how strong the evidence is for your original thought and then your new summary. So the two ways that we usually decide is like beyond a reasonable doubt. Like when there is so much information that it's a really huge doubt that this verdict would be wrong. Or there's a balance of probabilities. So this standard is kind of less stringent. And it says that the evidence for one side is more likely than the other. So when you think about all the information that you come up with, you can look at your defense or your prosecution and think like, is one of these probably more true without a reasonable doubt? Or is there kind of just a probability that I've looked at this one way or the other way, correctly or incorrectly? And so after you've had the time to put all the thoughts in your case together, what do you notice now about your thoughts and emotions? Once you've written it all down, once you've said it all out loud, once you've looked at all of the alternatives, once you've changed your way of looking at things and tried to see this from a different perspective, how do you think and feel now? Many times you're going to find that it's changed, again, because you are slowing your brain down enough to not allow it to take these shortcuts that we're used to, and rather you are forcing your brain to actually think through and do all the hard work. And therefore, you don't just shortcut into the thoughts and the feelings that you're so used to because they're always invoked by these same feelings. So the third one that I wanted to talk to you guys about today is called examining the evidence for and against your thoughts. Kind of like your putting thoughts on trial, but a little bit more extensive. And this is more in one of those columned recording type of instances. Again, if this is something that you're interested in, please let me know, because I would be more than happy to share any resources that I have with you guys. So this one explores like the traditional cognitive behavioral therapy way of testing whether your thought is accurate. It's called examining the evidence for and against your thoughts. It is similar to putting your thoughts on trial, but it uses different language. And sometimes just the use of different language, talking about something differently, saying it a different way, it helps you to digest it better. Sometimes the way that these forms and things are put together, people are able to work with them better. Like I like the putting your thoughts on trial because I like the layout, kind of the note-taking style. Some people become very overwhelmed with all of the different columns. I think that will probably be me. But it's just another way for you to do this. And sometimes you have to mix things up in your toolbox. What might help you today may not help you tomorrow, and that's completely okay. And that's why we want to make sure that individuals are equipped with multiple coping mechanisms, different things that they're able to do in order to deal with the symptoms that they're having. So one of the things that I tell people is that the only thing that separates one person from another person is their ability to manage the crisis that's in front of them. And if you have enough coping skills and different tools that you're able to utilize, it significantly decreases the likelihood that you will find yourself in some of these crises. And if you practice these things on a very regular basis, whether you're having a good day or bad day, whether your thoughts are on your nerves or not, whether you're feeling flattered or not, the likelihood that you stay balanced is much greater. So just having a variety of things to utilize, I think, is very important. So getting back to this, examining the evidence for and against your thoughts. So again, this is kind of broken up into like 7 different columns. So on this one, you have like 8 or 9 different areas that you're going to be looking at, 7 different areas that you're going to be writing about. So the first one, again, we always start with our situation. So, what is the situation and what's the context in which you notice? Usually you notice your situation because your emotions have changed. Date and time, where you are, who you're with, what's happening, how are you feeling, what happened just before, what happened right after. That's always number one. We have to have something to start with. So our situation. Emotions or feelings. So again, we go back to talking about our emotions in our body and scaling that from 0 to 100, right? So for example, your situation may be that you're at home alone with no plans. It's Saturday night about 7 p.m. That's what you would put in that first column. Your emotion or feeling, you might say you're feeling hopeless and you're feeling dejected. And if we had to rate that on an intensity, we might say that it's about 80% of each. Now, one of the things that I would encourage people to do as they get better is, where's that other 20%? What else are you feeling? Because there may be a little glimmer of hope, and we want to actually pull on that as well. So then the next thing that we're going to do, and I know we haven't talked a lot about it, but we want to identify those automatic thoughts. And our automatic thoughts usually go in categories like the catastrophizing, the all of or nothing thinking, and things like that. So what are those thoughts that just come up for you automatically? It may be, I'm a loser, I'm such a failure, I'm pathetic. Which one of those resonates with you the most? Like I usually say, like, take something and circle that one. So in this instance, maybe it's I'm pathetic. I just really feel like just a pathetic person. So then you're going to go over to your next column and we're going to talk again about the evidence that supports that thought. You might think to yourself, I didn't ask out that person that I like at work, even though I had the opportunity. So that might be supporting these automatic thoughts. Or I'm 32 years old and I live alone. I haven't had a proper relationship in 5 years. I'm working in a job that I don't like. All of these things may come up as to like, why is it that you're feeling like a loser? Why do you feel like you're a failure? Why do you think you're pathetic? And so once you write down all of those thoughts that you feel like support it, you have to now switch your seat and say, what's the evidence that does not support this thought? And it may take a little bit of time, especially when you're in a negative place, to kind of get yourself there to being able to think through this. But you may come up with things like, my friends would tell me not to be so hard on myself. Relationships aren't everything. I've had to concentrate on other areas of my life, like my mom's illness, or having to dispense my time in my education. I've got a job which is better than some of my friends, and even though I don't like it, I'm really good at it. It pays the bills. So the evidence that does not support that thought. So the evidence that says you're not a loser, you're not a failure, you're not pathetic. Then this is kind of where we start to go a little bit more in depth. You're going to start thinking of alternate or balanced thoughts. And so when you think about alternate or balanced thoughts, you're also going to try to rate them to the degree that you believe them. So an alternate thought in this situation may be, when I'm feeling low, I often judge myself really harshly. Life isn't going how I want it at the moment, but these feelings tell me that I need to make some changes. And it's obvious to me that I really value being in a relationship. So I may need to give some focus to that. That's kind of a more balanced thought. You're actually talking about what it is that's the problem instead of these automatic thoughts that say I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'm pathetic. What is it that's really going on? And it's this feeling of judging myself, this understanding that relationships are important, making changes. What is it that I need to change? And then you want to go in, and after you've kind of read all of this information, you've looked at everything, you've come to a more balanced way of thinking. Now, what emotion do you see and how are you feeling? So it may not make you feel 100% better. You may just say, okay, now I feel like there's a glimmer of hope because I don't feel like I'm just the worst person in the world and everyone doesn't want to be around me because I am no fun. But it may be, I didn't extend myself this weekend and I kind of wished I had because I would really have liked to gone out with someone. And I'm starting to get a little bit older now and I want to start focusing in on a relationship. So as you can see, again, doing these does not mean that we want you to have fairy tale thinking. That's not the focus of cognitive behavioral therapy. That's not the focus of therapy in general. We just want your thoughts to be balanced. We want them to be healthy. That does not mean that they're always going to feel the greatest, but we don't want them to be skewed by emotions. And so that's one of the things that we typically find a lot of times is that people become emotionally overwhelmed. And this leads to kind of a lot of those anxieties and the fear-based thinking and the negative thoughts, and you get into this cycle. And so one of the reasons that we utilize some of these interventions that I spoke about today is in an effort to help change or course correct that cycle. Whenever you're thinking about cognitive behavioral therapy, you think about the cycle of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And somewhere in there, we have to break the cord in order to make something different, to go a different way. And that's the whole purpose of some of these things. So I hope that you guys find this to be helpful. And of course, if you find that you would like to learn more about cognitive behavioral therapy or other interventions, if there's anything that I can provide for you guys, please send me a message. I have all of my information in the description box below. You can send me an email. You can PM me. You can email me. You can PM me. And I will be more than happy to provide this information to you and any guidance that I can give. We also have our Facebook group, Kraft Therapy, and I think many people know that my passion for crafting and my passion for therapy, I'm really trying my best to fuse these together because I want this to be an open dialogue. I want us to all have conversations. I want us to be comfortable supporting each other, depending on each other, working with each other. And I want to be the person that is willing to offer those things to you guys. So hopefully we will be back on track to doing another Mental Health Monday next week. I've talked to you guys about cognitive behavioral therapy on two of these, or the first two of these. So I think I'm going to switch gears and we may talk a little bit about dialectical behavioral therapy and some mindfulness and other skills during our next few. But I want to know what it is that I can help you guys with. So if there's a particular question that you guys have, if there's a situation that you will want me to address or to provide a little bit of insight on, again, I'm a therapist, but every situation is different. So if you give me a scenario, it will just be kind of some overarching information to try to help as I'm not seeing you one-on-one or seeing that person one-on-one, but I will be more than happy to give some information as to things that may be helpful or some suggestions on how to cope with certain things. So if there's anything that you guys want me to talk about, to address, if there are any topics that you guys would like for me to review, if there are certain therapy styles or certain techniques or certain diagnoses that you guys would like to learn about, I will be more than happy to incorporate that into our Mental Health Mondays. Because like I said, my goal for this year is for mental health and crafting to collide and to live happily ever after. So if you're not a member over in our craft therapy group on Facebook, I have a link in the description box below. Please go and connect with me over there. I'm trying to be a lot more active this year. I am not a huge social media fan, but I do want to be active with at least my group. So that's another place that you guys will be able to find me. And I will be more than happy to provide resources and to help in any way that I can. So just as a recap, I'm going to link the previous CBT video in the description box, as well as you've probably seen a card already for it, so that you can kind of get caught up if you missed the last Mental Health Monday. Today, we talked about 3 different tools that you can utilize for negative thinking and how to challenge those negative thoughts. And then when we come back next week, I think that I will do an introduction to dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, and take a couple of weeks to kind of talk about some of the skills that go along with dialectical behavioral therapy, such as mindfulness and interpersonal relationships and things like that. And we will continue to go from there. Like I said, I would love to hear from you guys. If you're not already a subscriber, please do. This community, I'm here for you guys. That's the only reason that I keep coming back, because I truly enjoy you guys and I value you. And I feel like you guys value the relationship that we've created here. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed today. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Of course, if you have any questions about anything that I did while creating this card, leave me a message. I'll be more than happy to talk you through. And this file was created in Design Space, so if you felt like you needed it, I could send you the file, but realistically, it's just a bunch of squares and score lines, so it was not very difficult to put together. This card was made for my grandmother, who is turning 98 on our birthday, which is this Sunday. So happy birthday to my queen. She'll be 98 on January 16th, and I am her birthday baby. And I'm going to have a birthday get together, so come and join us on Zoom. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and I am going to be looking forward to chatting with you guys soon, reading all of your comments, connecting with you, and hopefully seeing you guys on Zoom on Saturday. Have a great night.